Haunting of the Sallie House. In the heart of Atchison, Kansas, stood the enigmatic Sallie House, a relic of a bygone era. Built in the late 1800s, the Victorian-style house exuded an air of faded grandeur, its ornate architecture a testament to a time when it had been a proud family home. Tony and Deborah Pickman were drawn to the charm of the Sallie House when they moved to Atchison in the late 1980s. With its spacious rooms, intricate woodwork, and wraparound porch, it was a dream home for the young couple. Until it's not. Little did they know, their dream would soon transform into a nightmare. The house had a history, one that whispered of forgotten tragedies. Former occupants had passed through its halls, leaving behind whispers of memories, secrets, and perhaps something more. As they settled into their new home, the Pickmans' excitement gave way to unease. Strange noises punctuated the silence of the night, creaking floorboards, distant whispers, and inexplicable bumps. At first, they brushed it off as the quirks of an old house settling into its history. But as time passed, the disturbances became harder to ignore. One evening, as Tony was working late in his study, he heard the faint giggles of a child. Assuming it was just his imagination, he carried on. Yet, the laughter persisted, growing louder and more distinct. When he finally ventured into the hallway, he was met with an empty corridor, the laughter echoing into silence. Deborah, too, experienced her share of eerie incidents. While preparing dinner, she caught sight of a fleeting figure out of the corner of her eye. When she turned to face it, there was nothing there. She dismissed it as a trick of the light, but a nagging doubt lingered. A pervasive sense of unease settled over the couple. They began to feel as though they were never truly alone in their own home. Objects went missing, only to reappear in unexpected places. Doors opened and closed of their own accord. Temperature would inexplicably drop in certain rooms. One night, as they lay in bed, Deborah felt a soft touch on her arm. She turned to find no one beside her, only the emptiness of the room. Tony, too, would wake up with unexplainable scratches on his arms and legs, as though he had been in a struggle he couldn't remember. Despite their growing trepidation, the Pickmans attempted to rationalize the events. They considered faulty wiring, drafts, and even their own imagination. But as the occurrences multiplied, doubts took root. They reached out to friends and family, sharing their experiences, only to be met with skepticism. Word of the strange happenings in the Sallie house began to spread through the small town. whispers of a ghostly presence named Sallie circulated among the locals. As the days turned into weeks, the Pickmans found themselves increasingly consumed by the enigma of the Sallie house. The strange occurrences persisted, growing in intensity and frequency. Tony and Deborah were no longer able to dismiss them as mere coincidences or figments of their imagination. It was during one cold winter evening that the presence of the child seemed to reveal itself more clearly. Tony had been reading in the living room, his attention absorbed by the pages of a book. The room was bathed in the warm glow of lamplight when he noticed a small, shadowy figure out of the corner of his eye. Startled, he turned his gaze towards the figure, but it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Deborah, who had been in the kitchen at the time, rushed into the living room when she heard Tony's exclamation. Her eyes widened as she saw the look of astonishment on his face. He recounted what he had seen, a fleeting image of a young girl, her dress trailing behind her as if caught in an invisible breeze. Over time, the Pickmans began to piece together the fragments of encounters they had experienced. The kids' appearances were marked by a playful energy, the tinkling of laughter that seemed to float through the air, the soft patter of footsteps down the hallway, and the sense of a watchful gaze. Objects began to move on their own. Deborah would set a book on the coffee table, only to find it placed neatly on a shelf moments later. Photographs would fall off the walls and small trinkets would relocate themselves overnight. Yet, despite the eerie nature of these incidents, the Pickmans were not afraid. There was a gentleness to the child's presence that made them believe she meant no harm. Playful interactions took a more personal turn when the Pickmans started to hear her voice. It was a soft, childlike voice that whispered their names, asked innocuous questions, and occasionally sang nursery rhymes. Tony and Deborah would often sit in the dimly lit living room, carrying on conversations with the unseen entity that had become a part of their lives. As their connection with her deepened, the Pickmans felt a mix of wonder and apprehension. They began to wonder about her story. Had she lived there in life? What had happened to her? Reached out to experts in the paranormal field, hoping to gain insight into the history of their spectral guest. They eventually found that a young girl named Sallie had been brought to the house in the late 1800s, suffering from a severe illness. Despite the efforts of the local doctor, her condition had deteriorated rapidly, and she had passed away within the walls of the very room, the Pickmans' bedroom. The Pickmans' encounters with Sallie took on a deeper significance. They now understood that they were sharing their home with the spirit of a young girl who had faced a tragic end. Pickman's relationship with the Sallie house had shifted from mere curiosity to a deep, intimate connection. Until one night, racing downstairs, they discovered their collection of antique porcelain dolls strewn across the floor, their delicate features distorted by the impact. The poltergeist-like activity didn't stop there. Objects began to levitate, moving of their own volition before dropping to the ground with a crash. Deborah was once inexplicably knocked to the ground while ascending the staircase, leaving her with bruises that materialized seemingly out of nowhere. Tony reported feeling an invisible hand grab at his shirt, as if trying to pull him back. Even the most skeptical of visitors were unable to deny the unsettling aura that clung to the Sallie house. The Pickmans were thrust into a spotlight they never saw when the media caught wind of their haunted home. Reporters flocked to Atchison, drawn by the allure of a real-life haunted house. They turned to paranormal investigators and mediums in a desperate attempt to gain some semblance of control over their lives. In consultation with the experts, the Pickmans prepared for a night of communication like no other. The messages were cryptic, woven with fragments of emotions and memories. Sallie's voice emerged, her childlike innocence evident even through the written words. As the session continued, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The air grew colder, and shadows seemed to gather around the edges of their vision. Whispers filled the room, voices overlapping in a cacophony of sound. The Pickmans could no longer ignore the toll that their experiences were taking on their lives. Sleepless nights, anxiety, and the constant presence of the unexplainable. With heavy hearts, they made the painful choice to leave the Sallie house behind, seeking a fresh start away from the weight of the paranormal. The legacy of the Sallie house continued to captivate the minds of those who heard its tale. The house remained a silent witness to the mysteries that had unfolded within its walls. It stood as a reminder that the boundaries between the living and the departed are not easily defined, and that sometimes the answers we seek lie in the shadows that defy explanation. And with that, we have come to the end of our video. Please don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and click that notification bell. This has been saying, see you next time.